This is the earth plane. Then there's the astral plane, which is a level up from this, finer vibration. And then the causal plane is above the astral plane. All of those three planes are created, and they're part of what we call the three worlds: the earth plane, the astral plane, and the causal plane. The astral plane, mystics tell us, is 1,000 times brighter than the earth plane. Now we see these lights in the studio and they're very bright. But can you imagine getting in an astral plane where the light source there is 1,000 times brighter than this world? And then the causal plane is 1,000 times brighter than the astral plane. That's unbelievable, which means that the causal plane, the light shining in that area, that plane of existence, is 1,000,000 times brighter than this earth plane. 1,000,000 times.
So we don't need glasses?
Well,
It's
no,
astral plane?
Yeah.
No?
By the time you got there, you wouldn't need glasses. Now you would evolve. Your energy would be so refined it would be able to handle it. But in order to get to those levels, we have to be tried and purified. That's how that works. So people who have difficult lives should be grateful for those, because that means they're on the upward move. They're not being allowed to just sit around and eat bonbons all day and enjoy their life and waste it. You know, this human life should not be wasted.
Numerology helps you to know yourself better and the people around you. That one is the main benefit, or is another benefit also?
Well, like we talked about earlier, it's knowing you, and you can know yourself well if you know your numbers. But then once you understand that process, you can just take the same process and know it for other people. I find that great value. For my children, I know who they are, so I can help them, I can guide them. With my business associates or my students, once I know their numbers, I know where they're going, so I can relate to them on that level. We all see through multiple layers of energy. In the Bible, it talks about we all see through a glass darkly. Well, it's not just a glass darkly. Each of us sees through multiple layers of energy. And we all perceive things differently. You perceive things differently than I. And that's just the way life is. So when we understand those numbers, we can start relating to people a little bit better. If you had a lot of 4 energy in your chart, I have a lot of 5 energy in my chart. 4 is wants to be stable. 5s like to be spontaneous. 4s are practical. 5s like to be adventurous. So we're going to have a tug of war there. So if we know that as friends, then one day you may want to go and do something that's practical, and then you'll have to relinquish and maybe do something that's a little more adventurous on another day. But you have to know each other's numbers. If you didn't know that, then you may be doing this all the time, tugging war or clashing. So it's really helpful to know everybody's numbers.
So numerology will be very helpful when you want to date someone?
I think so. I think so. In fact, I just finished a book. It's going to be out hopefully within the month. It's called The 5-Minute Lover: Discovering the Secrets of Your Life, Loves, and Relationships in 5 Minutes. And in that book, I show you the kinds of numbers that you will have to make a good relationship with someone else, and vice versa. There's some things you don't want to do that will create just tumultuous relationships. So yes, in fact, I've been single for 16 years and I wouldn't get married unless those numbers are good for me and also good for my wife. And if I don't find them, then I'll just stay single, because I want a harmonious relationship. I don't want a battlefield. I've been there.
So you can imagine one day to ask for the name, last name, and the birthday, and found the number, and they say, "Oh, I'm sorry, oh, welcome to my life."
Ask for the full name at birth, not just that first and last name. The full name. That sets the destiny and the exact spelling of that name.
How many books you wrote?
I have this last book. This is 8. So I have several books on how to do numerology. I have a book of poetry called 99 Poems of the Spirit, which are all spiritually based. They all are based on some sacred scripture. I have a book called Messages from the Masters, Timeless Truths for Spiritual Seekers, which talks about reincarnation. It talks about vegetarianism. It talks about transmigration of the soul. And it uses hundreds of quotes from 9 perfect saints throughout the last 600 years to corroborate these truths. I have a companion set called The Age of the Female, 1,000 Years of Yin, and The Age of the Female 2, Heroines of the Shift, which explains why women have risen so fast in the public eye, why relationships are the way they are, why there are so many tensions in today's world, why it's so different now as compared to just 20, 30 years ago. The last 1,000 years were all dominated by male energy, the energy of the one. Now we are in the energy field of the two for 1,000 years. The two rules females. It rules relationship. It rules other people. For example, everybody's got cameras, right? Everybody's got cell phones. Everybody's got a camera. That is all about other people and their lives and interacting with that. We didn't have those in the last millennium, right? It's just now. So in this book I explain, especially in volume 1 of that book, I explain why things are the way they are. There are answers to everything. It's all there if we just look. And it's very fascinating. In the second volume, there's no numerology in Heroines of the Shift, The Age of the Female. There is a chapter on female firsts. There's a chapter on women athletes, notable women, all the Nobel laureates. I did pieces on each of them. And my favorite chapter is the last chapter called Yin Speak in that book, which is nothing but female quotes. And there are some wonderful, wonderful quotes, all kinds of quotes from women. And most of the quotes we tend to think about in the past have been from men. But there are a lot of great quotes that women have written. So that's what those two books are about. And then I have a book on Princess Diana called Diana Frances Spencer, Queen of Hearts.
What is the principal number for Princess Diana?
Well, she had a 7 life path, like you do. She did. So many souls do. And that's one of the reasons her life was so tumultuous. There are other factors in her chart that helped that along, but you can see why she was the way she was. She had a 9 soul also. This is a woman who wanted to be in the public spotlight. She wanted to be famous, and she got that wish. But it also shows in her chart very clearly that the press was a good friend of hers, but it was also her worst nightmare. And it's very clear how that works. But Princess Diana is a fabulous story. This is interesting because Princess Diana, think about this. For the last 1,000 years, the sun never set on the British Empire. For 1,000 years. They had territories all over the world, right? So when the world turned, the sun was always there. There was the British flag. In all of that time, the Union Jack, the flag of Great Britain, was never lowered to half-staff for the death of anyone, any king, any queen, the likes of Winston Churchill, arguably the greatest statesman of the 20th century, William Shakespeare, the greatest playwright who ever lived, the most quoted author of all time, and on, Francis Bacon, the greatest scientist who ever lived, and on and on. But when Princess Diana died, that Union Jack gets lowered to half-staff. That's the kind of power this woman had. Why? Well, when a flagpole is in a non-half-mast position, right? The flag's at the top. That represents the number 1. But when you drop that flag down, you bisect that number 1 into 2 parts. Now you have feminine energy. You have the energy of other people. She died on the 31st of August, 1997, just a couple years before the change of the millennium, from the first millennium to the second millennium. Her life is very profound. And here's a woman who never even graduated from college. She never went to college, couldn't get into college. And yet, she can do what no Winston Churchill, Shakespeare, or Isaac Newton could do, lower that Union Jack to half-staff. That's amazing. Plus, the Queen bowed at her coffin when she went by. The Queen never bows. Royalty never bows. And Princess Diana was not royalty. She was an aristocrat. So that's another example of the power that this woman had. When she died, half the world's population watched that funeral. 3 billion people watched her funeral. It was amazing. It's amazing. So there's a book called Blueprint of a Princess, Diana Frances Spencer, Queen of Hearts, and I explain all this in that book.
Our destiny is in our numbers. Our numbers are our own destiny. Fascinated. Thank you so much, Richard.
Thank you. And I'd like you to give you this book, please. This is one of my first books. It's called The King's Book of Numerology.
Thank you. Thank you. And people, just remember, let it shine.